Hi, folks. My name is Jon Barlow Hudson, and this is the exhibition of my maquettes. Maquettes is the French word for models. They are maquettes for large-scale commissions, anywhere from life-size to 100 feet high. Some of the maquettes are finished artworks in themselves. Others are still in their poster board form or wood or whatever it is I happen to make the sculpture with. A maquette can be made pretty much in any material and any size, usually to scale, most often to scale, let's say, so that you can more easily determine how big you're going to build and what materials you'll need and so on. With the maquette, you work out the aesthetic, design, structural problems of a project so that you don't have to do that with the final real expensive materials. And then often I take my maquettes to a structural engineer in Dayton, and he works out the structural aspects, which are very important, especially if you're doing public artwork, because otherwise if it falls over you get sued. So it's very important, especially an atrium piece, for example. Don't want it dropping on somebody's head. I think, I remember a public sculptor was doing a huge steel piece, and the riggers were not doing it the way he said, and part of it fell over and killed one of the riggers. So it's not gentle work that is. And there are dangers, like in casting bronze, which you might have seen here. You can burn your foot off or lose an eye or something with a splash of bronze. So making sculpture is heavy industry in a sense. So actually this is not a maquette. It's well, I guess you could say it's a maquette of me. It's my foray into self-portraiture that artists are often asked to venture into. So I hope you like it. This mirror stainless steel is something I work with a lot. These are granite pieces that came off a sculpture project, and these are grinding discs that I've worn down polishing stainless steel. So, and that's how you get, after you've done that a long time, you get kind of bug-eyed. So this is my self-portrait. I hope you like it. We'll move on to this piece. This is a red granite from a quarry in Wausau, Wisconsin. I spent a summer there in '05 making these three large-scale granite monolithic sculptures for a public art project in Milwaukee. It was called the Brady Street Bridge Project, and you see here the white is a pedestrian bridge over Lincoln Avenue. Lincoln runs north and south, and up on the ridge, there's a big high ridge here, 100, 200 feet high. And up top, there's the fourth sculpture that I made for this project. It's stainless steel and granite. It was wonderful fun working in the quarry outside of Wausau. This red granite is very beautiful, cherry red when it's polished, and it's very hard. So carving these parts into the piece was a lot of work, and I actually had a friend from Bulgaria who happened to be nearby. He came and helped on this piece in particular. So that was great fun. This maquette is not finished. I haven't polished it or anything. I just sort of roughed it out. And someday I may finish it, but as you can see, it would require some small tools, so a lot of delicate handwork. I made a couple of these, I just haven't finished them. This piece here is the maquette for this piece I did in Ireland. It was a public art project in Dundalk, County Louth, which is north of Dublin, sort of halfway between Dublin and Belfast. I just entered the competition and happened to get it, so I went over to Ireland to Cork and rented studio space in the National Sculpture Studio in Cork. They rent out studio space to sculptors, so I hired a local sculptor, and after I'd acquired the material, stainless steel, and spent 3 weeks or so there in Cork building the sculpture. It's about 10 feet high and 12 feet diameter. 3 planes of stainless, which you can see if you study the maquette. In poster board, just normal white poster board. It's actually mounted on a little cement column, and it was designed to go to a dock, be installed on a dock by the sea. So my theme was sailboats in a distance. And the name, Longa Foy Sheol, something like that in Gaelic, means ships at sea. It was very difficult to find that translation, but that's it. So they changed the location. So here we have some beached sailboats on a hilltop in Northern Ireland. So it was a wonderful opportunity to work there, and I sure hope I can repeat that. By the way, these granite columns are about 15 feet high and roughly 40-some inches, 42 inches wide. And the bridge comes out in a big spiral, a circular spiral down, and kind of creates this nest. So these are right in the middle of that big nest. So we'll move on to the next. This project is from 1986. It was in a 4-story office building in Cincinnati at the juncture of 71 and 275. At that time, it was called Emery Industries, National Distillers, and they wanted an atrium sculpture. I proposed this piece, and they accepted it, but in the developing of the idea, I went far beyond what I should have relative to the budget, because it went way over budget. Fortunately, the company realized what a wonderful piece they had and covered the cost, the actual cost overruns, but I never got a penny for it. But it was very important to me to build, and in fact, that was just the time Marianne Britton was visiting Yellow Springs friends, and I needed somebody to help, and she wanted a job. She wanted to come back and help me build it as a way to come to Yellow Springs. So she did an awful lot of the work on the piece. Let's see how to describe. These are maquettes. There are 9 of these units. They range in size from 3 feet high to 27 feet high. And the dimensions, the diameter of the brass tubes ranges from 3 feet wide diameter, 3 feet wide diameter to 3 inches diameter. So the longest is the smallest diameter, kind of like this one. The theme, they didn't have a theme. They just wanted me to relate it to the architecture. So I looked at these white columns. There are 2 white columns, round columns, and in the windows, surrounded 3 sides by windows with lots of mullions. And so there was kind of a cage thing going on. So I had this cage thing, and I had these columns. And I happened to just run into a copy of Asian Arts magazine, and on the cover, fortuitously, was pictures of these ancient jades from China called Kong or Tsung tubes. They're square columnar works with a round tubular space going all the way through. So for me, that just brought the tube into the cage and created this concept, which is essentially a Tsung tube. So I call it Tsung music. The tube is round, and that's the symbol of heaven, and the structure is square, that's the symbol of earth. It's like an early yin-yang symbol, the unity of heaven and earth. So that was appropriate for suspended work. Above, you can't quite see, there's these little square windows. The skylight was a grid of square windows, 5 wide and 5 long, so 25 skylights. So if you take that grid of 25 skylights and you go from center point to center point in a diamond shape, so to speak, you get 9, 3, 6, 9 skylights. And if you take the magic square of alchemy, which is 3, 6, 9 numbers, with the even numbers being at the corners and the odd numbers being in the center points with 5 in the very center. So I had 9 units, the shortest being number 1, the longest being number 9. So I suspended or installed each unit from the skylight with that number from the magic square. So the relative positioning of each piece to the others in terms of the right size and shape was just absolutely perfect. So I had the system of the magic square determining the placement. I had the system of diameter and length interworking. And you see the spacing of these crossbars is based on the Fibonacci numerical series, which is 0, 0 and 1 is 1, 1 and 1 is 2, 1 and 2 is 3, 2 and 3 is 5, 3 and 5 is 8, 5 and 8 is 13, so on. So this would be, say, 2, this would be 3, 5, 8, 13, 27, so on. So I aligned all 9 pieces with their center points on the same plane. And that filled the space in a really nice way, instead of saying, having all the tops hang from the same plane, or how do you determine to install them? So using this system, it was just a perfect installation. Denny Eagleson made a wonderful film of the installation, but I don't have it on CD. Is a problem. And then a couple of years ago, Debbie went to show a friend the work who lives in Cincinnati, and they walked in and it was gone. New owners had a new interior designer who wanted a different decoration, and so they tossed it out and replaced it with banners, I guess. So here you have a major artwork which could have gone to the community, being tossed out. This little lady is made of Spanish Marquina marble, which I brought back from Italy when in 2000, I taught for a semester at the University of Georgia, the school abroad in Cortona, Italy, and I started this series there. I had seen in the Etruscan Museum at Fiesole, that ancient Etruscan site above Florence on the hilltop. They have a beautiful amphitheater there and a wonderful museum full of Etruscan works. And inside there's this wonderful little bronze about this big. It's a figure with no arms and head, but you can see that she's much more slender. It's more Giacometti-like. You can see that she's wearing a dress, and her calves are quite pronounced, and the breast and derriere are sort of abstract. They're just a line. So it's very abstract, I guess because she's wearing the dress. But it's such a timeless piece. It could have been made yesterday or something. It's just wonderful little thing. So I wanted to play with it, with those motifs in the piece, because they're so timeless and abstract, that it seemed to me that would be fun to use those motifs in my own figure to explore the possibilities. So I've done maybe 12.5 or so of these. And this particular block of Marquina was pretty much this size, and I wanted to get use as much of the block as I could, and so this is how it turned out. If you can see in these photographs back here, in 2006, I think it was, I went to a symposium in Hui'an, China, which is southeast coast, and it's a big stone industry area with hundreds of quarry stone factories, and it's just amazing. You see a stone yard and it's just full of Buddhas and garden sculptures, all carved in stone, and they do monuments and architectural work. And they had a symposium there. You can even see in the background. So this was a block of that blue-green granite that's very fine grain, which they do a lot of the Buddhas and stuff, and the wall relief carvings, because it's so tight and fine grain, you can get a lot of very good detail. And it's granite, so it's very strong and weather resistant. So they gave me this 3-meter high block of that blue granite, and I carved this figure with a technique of, say, I'd drill in 2 or 3 drill holes, then put in the wedges and pop off the piece. So the whole figure is carved just using that technique of drilling and splitting, because the stone, it just created these wonderful scallops. And so it's a really neat texture. And so a couple of areas I left natural, and other areas I polished. So you have like 3 textures and colors. And then in 2011, I went to the symposium at Andres Art Institute in Brookline, New Hampshire, which is a sculpture trail on a hillside, an old ski slope, Bear Mountain. And I found a beautiful block, life-size block of gray granite, beautiful gray. And so I carved this life-size figure. And it's installed on a rock out in kind of the edge of the forest, along the edge of the ski slope. And she's looking out over the valley, just like an Etruscan Maynard would have done centuries ago.
Can you say something about what a symposium is?
The Sculpture Symposia started in 1959. A number of artists somehow got together to make sculpture together at a quarry in Austria. And I think Karl Prantl was one of the more notable, but they were from different countries. So they had such a wonderful time working together, helping each other, learning from each other, partying together every night. They drink and eat well, and it was just a symposium, wonderful time. So from there, they spread out, went to their home countries, and started their own symposia. So the symposia idea is somebody organizes to bring art sculptors to a place to make sculpture. And you talk, but the idea is to make sculpture. So the idea is most symposia provide room and board and materials and some equipment and travel and hopefully an honorarium. And you stay anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, just depending on the site. And they have them all around the world and all kinds of materials. Usually it might be in an area where you have a particular quarry, like limestone or granite or marble, or wood timbers or steel, or in case of Yellow Springs, we did bronze. So it's just and most often, but not always, the works remain in the community and are placed in parks or whatever around town, or a college campus or something. Sometimes they have a sculpture park. This is Fire in the Hole. It's mirror stainless steel, and it's kind of a yin-yang form, one space wrapping around another space. I'm sure it's a little hard to see in a film, but and with the mirror surfaces, that makes it even harder to ascertain what it is. But I made 6 of these, and then they were assembled together, so point to point. So the one below comes out here, and the other 4 go like so, making a 3-dimensional cross. So if you can imagine, it would have been about 22 inches diameter. So I was a finalist in a competition for the airport sculpture in Omaha, Nebraska in '86. So I took this, or I sent it to them, whatever, and they gave me the commission. And this is the work. It was roughly 12 feet high. And each one of these I made in the studio, and then they're bolted together on the installation, so I could take them as individual units and install on site. So it was here for a while, and then they needed to change the airport, so they moved it to the Civic Center Plaza in front of the City Hall. So it's there now outside. Much better location. This was kind of crazy. When the work was there, the maquette was there, and I was there for a visit. The architect asked me what I usually got for my design fee. What's an average design fee? And I said, well, $1,000 is pretty much the average design fee for this sort of thing. And then they told me that my maquette had disappeared from the architect's office. So he was thinking it was only worth $1,000, so poof. However, he didn't realize that this is a finished sculpture and that it was made before this project. It was not a maquette worth just $1,000. So I told him it was worth at least $12,000, and he was, of course, flabbergasted. And so I had to get a lawyer through volunteer lawyers for the artists, and take him to court. And we got consultants and appraisers and that sort of thing. So I won, and he had to pay. So he should not have conveniently let the sculpture disappear from his office. Of course, the lawyer got a sizable chunk, but principal. This sculpture is Paradigm. I sent in photographs of my work to the upcoming expo in Brisbane, Australia, and I think it was maybe '86. And they were there for about a year, and finally I never heard anything, so I called. And I just happened to get the new creative director, John Truscott, who'd done a lot of films and theater. And he saw my photographs, and then one of them was a piece over here, Morning Star. He liked that and asked if I could do it 15 feet instead of the 7. And there was a maquette very much like this, same silver poster board, about this high, with the tubes coming out of it in a spiral pattern. And he liked that, and he said, could you do that 50 or 100 feet high? And I said, I'll figure out the price. So I sent him a price to do it 100 feet high. So we only had this little bit to think about is in terms of a 100-foot piece. So I figured it out and gave him a quote, and he said build it, both of them. So he wired me $114,000 before we'd even signed the contract. So that was great fun. So I worked with commercial metal fabricators in Dayton and built these 2 pieces. The Morning Star took at least 3 months. And then building Paradigm in 7 sections took about 5 months. Now it's stainless steel, and during Expo, in this photograph, you see there's some lights. There were some lights mounted inside the tubes. In the big piece, there are tubes that stick out maybe 6 inches, and it's in a spiral pattern. so that it ends up being like a double helix. Whereas in this case, like in these two maquettes, there are no tubes. So 7 sections. I can't remember, the total weight was about 42,000 pounds. And there's an internal structure because it had to be engineered for 110 miles an hour because of cyclones and that sort of thing. And there was about a ½ inch on either side of the units when we put them in the land-sea shipping containers. There were 5 containers. They went first by truck and then by train, then by boat over to Brisbane. And I had to go over to finish Morningstar because you could only ship it at 12 feet and it was bigger, so I had to finish it over there. But this piece they had installed by the time I got there. And I climbed up to the top and looked down and sighted along these edges, and they were all straight as an arrow, all lined up. So we actually did a pretty good job of building it very straight and very sturdy. So now this is actually, it had to be moved from Expo site once it was over because the land was being sold. So it's been in storage since then. So at some point here in a couple of months, I'm going to be going to Brisbane to lobby the city government. I've kept contacting each new mayor and arguing, reinstall it, reinstall it. It's a cultural asset. But they haven't yet. I guess they're afraid to spend the money. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get it reinstalled. The theme I thought of was, well, it's a world expo, so it's a universal thing. So I think of the sculpture as being both the DNA aspect is universal human shared DNA, and also I think of it as a world axis. Like Brisbane was the center of the world, and so the world turned around this axis, around Brisbane. If you've ever seen a cholla cactus from the southwest, it's a remarkably similar structure, which is coincidence, but having lived for a year in Tucson and seen those cholla cactus, I had that maybe in my aesthetic or memory bank. So that might have contributed to the design of this piece. But it is wholly and totally my design. This is the original maquette that I figured out for Triskelion. It was an art agent came to me to do a 12-foot high piece for Federal Mogul in Lititz, Pennsylvania. They make ball bearing units. So I thought of the theme of systems. A ball bearing set is a system. The robotic factory they have is a system.